Hey there and welcome back to another MCU video. And recently we saw the release of the trailer for the next Disney Plus original show for the MCU, Moon Knight, which follows the story of Mark Spector, a mercenary who suffers from dissociative identity disorder, as he's drawn into a deadly mystery involving Egyptian gods alongside his multiple identities. And already before the trailer released, this was a premise that I felt was really intriguing and unique, and I really hope they really hone in on the mystery aspect of the narrative. As we see in the trailer, a lot of the story seems to be following Stephen Grant, a shop employee in one of Spector's identities, who suffers from blackouts and strange memories of another life. So I would expect that we're going to have a lot of early cut to black moments where he finds himself in trouble out of nowhere, and a lot of flashback sequences that will only start to make sense as you move further through the story and he manages to piece together who he actually is. And I really do hope that they lean in on that psychological horror aspect of all of this, whilst also still peppering in the classic MCU vibe. And I feel like compared to the films, the shows have really tried to push boundaries a little bit and blaze a new trail of storytelling and genre. And this really feels like a culmination of all that built up hype. Because now, Moon Knight has the most viewed MCU Disney Plus series trailer on YouTube. They put in a lot of work to ensure that each of these felt unique, and now this one's set to blow up. And I mean, it doesn't even have the draw of a pre-existing character taking center stage. This is his debut, and it's off to a great start. Anyway though, now I want to go through the trailer and talk a little bit about what we see, and what this means for the show, and for the future. And we start off the trailer with a few shots of Stephen preparing himself for bed, locking his door with a hefty number of locks, playing with a Rubik's Cube as he stares blankly at his ceiling, strapping himself to his bed, and then laughing hysterically. And as all of this occurs visually, we also get a voiceover of Stephen calling what seems to be a sleeping disorder hotline, and talking about how he's struggling to differentiate between dreams and reality, with the two separate pieces of narration sort of blending together over time until it's just a jumble of noise before you get the shock of him jumping out of bed and getting taken down as he's still chained down by the ankle. So yeah, this whole opening sequence of the trailer feels straight out of a horror film. So I'd say that this is definitely feeling like it's the direction they're going to go with this. A mix between horror, action, and comedy. And honestly, I think it's a good choice and will definitely help him stand out from the crowd and carve out an important place in the MCU in the future. And then we move on to the classic "My life is a mess" scenes, where we see Stephen struggling in his everyday life as he gets flashes of Moon Knight in the mirror, glimpses of monsters down dark hallways, and is teased and belittled by his co-workers. So that's nice. And honestly, I think the highlight of these little sequences is when he's freaking out in the elevator as a monster gets closer and closer to him before cowering and screaming, only for it to be a little old woman all along, with him trying to brush it off as having lost a contact lens. We then see him in the museum that he works at, trying to find the source of a mysterious ringing phone before he finds it in what I assume is an Egyptian artifact of some kind, a sarcophagus maybe? Dunno. Anyway, he answers the phone, and a voice on the other end calls him Mark and starts yelling at him about them being worried that he was dead, but all he can think about is that she just called him Mark, and he doesn't understand why. So, based on that and what we've seen so far, I'd guess that we spend probably the first episode and a half solely following the altar of Stephen as he tries to come to grips with how his life is seemingly falling apart. And then he gets that phone call and we start to see more and more of the various different alter egos come into the story as they try to piece together what's happened to him. And then to complete the horror movie vibe, we get to see the character of Arthur Harrow, who seems to be a full-on cult leader who's encouraging Mark to give in to the voices in his head and embrace the chaos. And as he says this, we get an awesome shot of Mark turning into Moon Knight and beating down on some monster looking thing? Dunno. And I really love the costume. It's so unique compared to everything we've seen before in the MCU. And I really like the whole Egyptian mummy vibe they had going on. It just looks so cool. So given that he's a mercenary, or at least the Mark part of him's a mercenary, I'm guessing he stole some artifact which turned out to be cursed or blessed by some god and it broke his brain? I don't know, maybe it's going to be unrelated, but I feel like this is going to be the origin that they go with. So yeah, most of this to me seems pretty awesome, but there is one thing I'm a little bit apprehensive about, and that's his disorder. And I'm hoping they're not going to play it up too much for laughs. I mean, we see that in some scenes, it's treated quite seriously, like when he smashes the mirror or he chains himself up, or when he's hitting himself and screaming in what looks like, I don't know, an asylum maybe? But then on the other hand, you can see that it also is played for laughs, with the whole contact lens thing in the elevator gag. And then another scene where I guess Stephen, I think, comes back into control in the middle of a car chase after he's just killed somebody with a gun and starts to panic. And maybe that wasn't meant to be a funny joke, but I laughed at it, so maybe I'm the one who's wrong. But yeah, I'm not trying to be some moral paragon of virtue, but I think they need to find the right balance. Because yeah, it's a big part of the character, and thus if you treat it too seriously, it'll make the character feel too serious, but it also shouldn't be treated as too much of a joke either. They need to find a way to have the best of both worlds. But honestly, since they have a really good track record with their recent content, I think it's going to be fine, and that Moon Knight's going to turn into must-see TV and become a very important and integral piece in the MCU going forward. But, as always, those were just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the trailer? You hyped for Moon Knight? Did the trailer grip you and draw you in, or are you maybe a little bit apprehensive? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to leave a comment and let me know.